Sick and tired of your love-hate relationship with wine?
Welcome to the Feel It Alcohol-Free podcast. Hi, I'm Coach Ruby Williams.
And I'm Coach Susan Larkin.
We're two former wine lovers turned alcohol freedom coaches, exposing the lies about alcohol.
And giving you, our listeners, the tools to break free so you can feel lit.
And when you're lit, you'll feel healthier, freer, and more in control of your life.
So relax, kick back, and get ready to feel lit alcohol-free. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Feel Lit Alcohol-Free podcast. We are so glad you're here with us today. And we have a special guest today. We're super excited to invite Rory Kinsella to the podcast. And he is a Vedic meditation teacher and a sober coach based in Sydney, Australia. And I'm excited to have him here to just talk about meditation. Both Ruby and I have meditated. I was introduced to meditation on my alcohol-free journey, and both of us are glad we're having him on the podcast because we need to get back into our meditation practice. So
Exactly.
A little bit about Rory is he's a former hard-drinking musician and journalist, and he quit alcohol in 2017, and he now helps others change their relationship with alcohol through his Wise Monkey Way online programs, which I love that name. It's so
me
cool.
too.
He teaches an effortless style of meditation using a mantra that allows people to move beyond stress and overthinking and find a place of stillness within. So I'm super curious to find out more about this. But the first question that came to my mind when I read your bio was hard drinking musician. Woo! So what instrument did you play? And tell us a little bit about your hard drinking life before you became alcohol free.
Well, yeah, and I think Ruby and I also want to hear about your hard drinking musician life too. So I live in Sydney, Australia, but I grew up in the UK, so I've got a bit of a mixed British Australian accent for you to try and figure out. But in my teens, my dream, like many young people, is to be a rock star. Mm-hmm. So if you could see my full video, I've got about 10 guitars behind me. And growing up in the 90s, I wanted to be in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Mm-hmm. So because they were such a big band, I was like, Flea is amazing. He's my hero. I want to do what he does. So I did that for a couple of years. But then when I went to university, I grew out of it and I got into computer music. And I remember swapping my guitar with a friend who had this synthesizer thing. But then in the week that I graduated uni, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I bumped into a friend who was in a band. And I was like, oh, congrats. I hear you got a record deal. And she was like, yeah, it's all going really well, but our bass player's left. And I was like, I'm a bass player. So I had an audition, got in the band. And then I was like, phew, I don't have to think what job to get for at least another year or so. So was in this band. I was hard drinking. The band wasn't. The band was very kind of straight laced, and we played nice. We call it folk soul music. So we had acoustic guitars and flutes and violins and things. But I was like, no, I'm in the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm going to be hard drinking. So I was like, no, I'm going to be the rock star. So we did that for a few years in my early 20s, and then when I think back to if I had a word for my 20s, it would be music. So as well as doing the bands, I also did music production. I did club nights and I was a DJ. And then when I had to get a job, I was a music journalist. So I was very much around musicians, and that fits into my drinking story because, you know, what do musicians do? They drink, you know, that's celebrated in all the tabloids. It's like all the exploits that rock stars are getting up to. So I, you know, it's one of those things where it's not just, and this is the same in my music journalism jobs. It was like, it was cool. It was expected. You got free gig tickets. It was, even when you came into work hungover, it was like, well, that's funny. We used to have this thing called the hangover hat of shame that you had to wear, but it was a kind of a badge of honor at the same time.
Yeah. Well, we find that in so many jobs, not just musicians, like attorneys,
doctors.
Any corporate jobs, it seems like drinking is like part of the culture sometimes, which is really frustrating for us now that we're alcohol free. It's sort of like, oh, this, we don't need this. So I was not like in a professional band where I was not getting paid or anything, but I used to drink because I would be so nervous. And so, but then it's just so dumb because I would get up there and then forget the words, right, to the song. So, I mean, drinking really doesn't help you be a better musician, even though people think it helps creativity and all those things. That's just that's not true.
Yeah. And there's a quote in one of the Quit Lit books, which is like, if alcohol really helped you relax, we would be suggesting people had it before job interviews and driving tests.
Yeah. Or giving it to our teens. Like, when's the most stressful time of life? It's in high school, but no, you're not allowed to drink. That's bad for you, you know? So yeah, it doesn't really make sense. So then tell us about how you decided that you needed to pursue an alcohol-free lifestyle or get sober or...
So I had this 20s music alcohol fueled thing, and I would say I was a binge drinker, but a regular binge drinker. So get drunk 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Never drank in the day, but had periods of drinking every night and drank to fall asleep sometimes. And then that drifted into my 30s when I moved from the UK to Australia. And I reached a point where I hit 35 where I had what I call my early midlife crisis. So for my 35th, it coincided with this warehouse party that I was running and DJing at, and it was already seedy, and there was these seedy conversations with the owner of the club about who would have a take of the drug dealer money, and it was just seedy. And then I played my set and no one enjoyed it, and I didn't enjoy it, and you know, that I wasn't enjoying the drinking or the party drugs that we were having. And I was just like, because it was a milestone birthday, 35, I was like, that prompted me to look forward into the future. And I was like, I don't want to be this, 50 or 60. I don't want to be that guy who's still DJing with the 20-year-olds. So that started my change. But interestingly, alcohol was so embedded that I didn't think about quitting alcohol, but I quit smoking and I quit DJing. And I was like, DJing, that's the problem. That's the problem here. They should have like health warnings on DJ. And then that started this journey of I guess it's a wellness journey, in that because I'd removed that partying aspect of my life, I was left with a bit of a void in what my identity was. Because in my 20s, if I, not that I thought about it like this, but thinking back, it was like my purpose was to help people forget their worries on the dance floor, right? And that was if I was thinking about what my service was in the world, it was that, and I enjoyed putting on these parties, and we, prided ourselves on it. So when I'd removed that, I had a bit of a gap in what my purpose was. But at 35, so when I quit smoking, I was like, right, I need to get fit. So the first thing was exercise. So I started running, which is such a cliched mid-30s male thing to do. So I couldn't run for more than 5 minutes, but then within a year, I ran a marathon, and that was the first signal to me that I could achieve something that wasn't, drinking related. But it also made me feel good, literally feel good in my body. And there's this common thing called the runner's high, right, where you get endorphins. It was like I hadn't had this feeling before that wasn't from an external substance, where I felt good, and I was like, whoa, this is good. I can see why people get addicted to this, and that idea of switching healthy addictions for unhealthy ones. And that then really opened my eyes to this other way of living, where it wasn't revolving around nightclubs or what was happening at night. And I think it was also partly because I moved to Australia, and Australia is more of an outdoorsy, health conscious place. And then over that year, 35, 36, I did some more like psychological investigations. So I did personality tests at work, but then I did an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming course, which is really interesting to understand my mind. And then I had this mentor at work who was like, you should meditate. Have you ever tried meditating? And I was like, I have tried meditating. In my first job as a music journalist. We had this crazy guy who owned the magazine who was really like left wing and hippie and activist kind of guy, but he also ripped everyone off and didn't pay people's wages and didn't pay suppliers and all that. So he was this complicated guy, but he introduced meditation to us, but he didn't teach it very well. He'd say, right, everyone close your eyes, meditate, clear your mind. So we'd all sit there, or I would sit there and I'd be like, okay, let me just clear my mind. Okay, right. Remove all thoughts. Oh, damn it. I can't do this.
Yeah, that happened to me too. I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah. So because I had a bad teacher in him, it really put me off, and that put me off for 10 years. So when this mentor at work suggested it, I was a bit wary. I was like, yeah, I kind of tried that. I think my mind's too busy to meditate. It's not for me. But because I was in such a good place with my exercise and I was in this exploratory phase, or I was happy to try things out, I started trying different techniques. So I tried mindfulness. I did a mindfulness course for 6 weeks, and I got benefit from it. So mindfulness is breath meditation, body scan, things like Calm and the Headspace app. I got benefit from it, but I didn't fall in love with it. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep looking around, see what else there is, which is when I came across my teacher Tim, who taught Vedic meditation that we were mentioning just before. And Vedic meditation is a slightly different technique. It goes under a few different names, but the main difference from, if we think mindfulness is breath, usually breath, Vedic meditation is usually a mantra. So a mantra is a word or sound that we think in our minds silently. We're not chanting it out loud. And this is a different medium for us to move towards a state of rest. So as someone who was into music, as we were talking before, the mantra is a sound. Although we're not saying it out loud, it's a sound. And I personally found sounds more relaxing for me than focusing on my breath. Especially because in my party days I was a smoker, so I was thinking, breathe into the lungs and try and forget all the tar from all those 40 cigarettes you used to have on a big night out. And then one of the other key things that I liked about Vedic meditation is that we sit comfortably. So we're not sitting cross-legged, we're not sitting in lotus pose, which meant that, because when I'd done that before at yoga classes and things, I'd be like, oh, my back really hurts. This is uncomfortable. And then the third differentiator is that my teacher, Tim, he really got rid of the idea that we were supposed to be clearing our minds. And that's one thing that I loved about it, because it meant that there was no failure. The idea was to see how laid back you could be, and the word that we use is nonchalant. It's like, how nonchalant can you be? So it's not about clearing your mind, it's about being okay with the fact that your mind is going to start running around. And that just moved the goalposts and made it much more achievable, rather than going back to my old boss, who wasn't a meditation teacher. He just picked up these misconceptions about meditation. It was like, sit still, don't move, put your hands in like those mudra.
Don't think.
Don't think. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to be a failure, so I don't want to do that. So it was all about, and this is what, even 2 weeks after learning, I was like, I wrote in my journal, I want to teach this. So I got it really quickly. I was just like, this is great. I really get it. And I really loved the delivery from my teacher, and this idea of making it easier for people. And this is what eventually led to me having more meaning in my life in my 40s. So if we link back to that, I said meaning in my 20s was helping people forget their worries on the dance floor. And then I could see that meaning for me in my 40s might be helping people overcome their worries and stresses through meditation. So it meant that I wasn't a completely different person, but I was using a different medium, which was more appropriate to my stage in life in my 40s. And I really like that, stories are very important to all of us and what stories we create. And that really helped me think, well, my 20s wasn't a waste, it's part of my story, and all of us as people who work in this space, it's like we need to be relatable to people. So it's good to have your story to because I can relate to Susan because we were both musos, right? Or as we were saying before, every industry has lots of drinking in it, and the more that I work in this space, the more it's like, oh yeah, engineers, big drinkers, or people who work in mining, lawyers, doctors. I've had so many doctors as clients.
Me too. It's crazy. It's everywhere, right?
Yeah, it is. So now you were still drinking when you started meditating, or how did that?
Yes.
How did meditation help you?
Yeah. So I'd started this move away from the party Rory, and but I hadn't stopped drinking, but I'd stopped the kind of huge nights out. But the week I started to meditate, I noticed a change. It was not my intention at this point to necessarily change my relationship with alcohol. It was so embedded that I hadn't even, this was over 10 years ago. So it was much less widely talked about. But what I noticed that first week I learned to meditate is that I was able to not drink what I call the crappy midweek drinking, the drinking that I knew I didn't enjoy and wasn't helpful. So midweek work drinks where people would go for 2 and then I would find myself still out at 2 a.m. going, oh, why have I done this again?
Yeah.
Or stress related drinking where it's like, oh, it's Friday night, I have to drink, like I need to drink because it's been so stressful. I found those crappy midweek or just crappy drinking fell away almost immediately, and I was able to drop my people pleaser tendency, which was like, oh well, Bob's drinking and he says I should have a beer, so I should have a beer. I don't want to let him down. So that changed. So immediately I was drinking significantly less because it was, and this is how I talk about it, it wasn't part of my coping mechanism anymore because meditation became that coping mechanism. But then it did take a couple more years for me because it was so embedded in my identity, and all my friends are big drinkers. Yeah. So it took a while to get out of that, it's someone's birthday, it's someone else's birthday, it's some big music festival. So it wasn't till, 3 years later when I finally quit, but it got fewer and further between these big nights out, but still, I would get 4-day, 5-day hangovers, and I'd be like, I'm wasting my life here. So my solution in that moderation period was just to go out less. And then there was a point, and it was another milestone. I turned 40 by this point, just turned 40, and my last big night out was actually my 40th birthday. And then a couple of months later, I went on a meditation retreat in Mexico. My sister lives in the States, so it was after that, and that gave me the kind of final push and clarity to say, why don't I just stop drinking? Because by this point, I just started teaching meditation, and it really didn't align with that. As in, I'd offer a class on a Sunday, but sometimes I'd be hungover, or I'd be like, I'm available, students, to you all the time, but not when I'm on a hangover. Don't come anywhere near me. Like it really didn't feel aligned with where I was moving to. And the other key thing that happened on that retreat was, like, it wasn't a sober retreat, but the yoga teacher who was assisting on it, a New Zealand lady called Claire Robbie, she was a year alcohol free at that point, and I'd never had like a role model at that point because I wasn't really in this scene. I wasn't following other people who were doing it, and I was like, oh, here's this normal person who's just chosen to not do this and hasn't gone through the usual route of AA meetings and things like that. It's like, no, I'm just choosing to stop doing this because I've it's not worked for me, or it's no longer working for me, which prompted me to do Dry January in 20. So I stopped at the end of 2017 and did Dry January in 2018, which in Australia is a weird thing to do because it's the summer. It's the middle of summertime here. But that was a great test because there were all these summer activities. Like I had a whole day boat party. I had a wedding in New Zealand. And then I also had this ski trip to Japan, all of which were things that I never would have considered doing alcohol free before. But I was like, okay, well that, I wouldn't have chosen to do it this month, but I just happened to be doing it. But that made it so much easier for me because I'd gone through these big tests. And when I coach people, I'm always like, well, look, you might not want to start this month because you've got your son's wedding, but this is perfect. If you get through someone's wedding, you can get through anything, right? Nothing is a big test anymore. Yeah. So vacations, weddings, those real big events, if people can get through them early in their journey, it just means that, random work drinks, they're no longer a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And then,
so great.
And then
that you focused on that. Yeah. And then you had that experience yourself.
Yeah. And, I never committed to not drinking I committed to a month, dry January. And then at a month, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to 100 days. And then at 100 days, I wrote an article because I stopped being a music journalist and I was a health journalist, which was quite funny. And I'd pick all the stories. We see those stories in the media that which say red wine's good for you. And it's some very minor fact about wine, which can be good for you in very specific circumstances, which doesn't relate to anyone. But I'd be like, yep, the headline is red wine is good for you.
Yep.
Or bacon is good for you, which people would always click on the website. Anyway, I wrote this article, which was what it's like to give up drinking for 100 days. And I got lots of people read it, and it wasn't anything revelatory in it that, that wouldn't be familiar to you, but it was like, yeah, it was easier than I thought. I feel great. I really enjoy relaxing on the weekend. And I noticed that I got a lot of interest in my meditation teaching from it, although I mentioned that I meditated, but it wasn't a huge part of the article. And because I'd been struggling to attract students just by talking about stress, I was like, oh, this is a really good way of advertising the benefits of meditation in a real world issue that people have, and something that I'm an expert on. We can pick niches. I was like, what have I got 10,000 hours experience in?
Wow. Yeah. That's so true. So I started meditating, and I guess it was a Vedic. Pronouncing it right.
Like Darth Vader.
Vedic. Okay.
Yes.
I started after I became alcohol free, but to use as a coping mechanism in order to deal with stress and anxiety, in order to stay alcohol free, in my journey. And it's so interesting that you were able to give up alcohol as a coping mechanism because of the meditation, which then led to you being able to give up alcohol.
Yes. Yeah. Really, and that's the kind of the counterintuitive thing about my approach. And it's not that I was the first person to put meditation and alcohol together. I haven't done 12 steps, but it's step 11 is meditation, right? Meditation and prayer.
And there are meditation AA meetings. I used to go, those were my favorite, but yes.
Yeah, so it's in there, but that's more like your story, Susan, where it's like you do the work and then it's like a nice coping thing on the end, or it's part of that spiritual aspect. Whereas I'm like, well, let's just get that in first. And you do that while you're still drinking even. And you sort out your coping mechanisms first. And then it becomes a lot easier. So it's kind of, I guess what I've added to it is bringing it right up to be the first thing that you do. It's not step 11, it's step 1. I had an old program which was called the 6 steps, and it was step 1. It's like, right, well, let's work on that. And that's specifically working with, people drink for many different reasons, but I believe stress is a big contributor to that. Mm-hmm. Whether that is, midweek drinking, mommy wine culture, work drinks, Friday drinks, right? But even lots of social occasions, it's stress-based because you've got social anxiety, things like that. So I'm like, let's just deal with your stress. and then we'll leave the, oh, it's your son's wedding to later, right? Because that's a slightly different category. That's celebratory one, or rewards, slightly different. But let's get rid of the crappy stuff, because people have got much less hold over that, and they can naturally see that bottle of wine that they're having on a Wednesday, that they're maybe, you know, sneakily having the second half of it. They're happy to give that up. So we'll cope with that first. So it's more of a, yeah, we'll give you the solution to your stress first, and then you'll have more clarity because you'll be drinking less. Meditation also helps with mental clarity, right? So that will help you along the way, but it means that it's can be a bit of a longer process, and it's not like you don't have to stop drinking on this day. As I'm sure you've experienced, many people have high ups and downs in their drinking journey. So I impress that on people, and to be resilient. And guess what? Meditation helps with resilience with those setbacks along the way, and just letting people know that it can be a longer journey. And I think that, you know, the fact that it took me years of doing it, not that I was consciously trying to stop, but because it didn't even occur to me, right, until that point where I had that inspiration from Claire, and then I came home, and the first day I got back from that retreat, it was a friend's leaving do in the pub in the afternoon. I was like, oh, should I go? Should I drink? Should I not go? And then I was like, I could go and not drink. And I was like, it's like head exploding. It's like, what? I was like, you know, billions of people before me have thought that, and just it not been a big problem. But I was like, I'd never thought of that. The only times I'd not drunk were, you know, I was designated driver or something like that, which I used to hate. Back in the band days, I had a car, so I was often designated driver, and I was like, you're killing me here. What? I have to just, you know, sip on my pint of beer for, you know, hours. This is killing me. It's killing my creative juices. How am I supposed to perform? All those excuses. But yeah, that idea that I could go out and not drink, it was amazing, and enjoy it, and then be able to leave after 2 hours rather than 8 hours, and then be able to do something the next day. And one of the things that I remember from that first month is being able to feel relaxed on the weekend, being able to lie on the sofa without, you know, dialing for a pizza and having to grab for a bottle of wine, you know, hair of the dogs. And I was like, lying on the sofa is super relaxing. You know, the weekend is relaxing on its own. I can't believe I've ruined so many.
Yeah. Ruined so many with alcohol, which isn't really relaxing, right? You get through the weekend, and then you need a weekend from your weekend, you know.
You know,
recover on Monday morning when you have to go to work, which is crazy.
And I would say that, you know, a hangover is it's like the opposite of relaxation. It's like, if you could come up with something that was the opposite of relaxation, I would say it was a hangover.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so this is such a great resource then. So the kind of coaching that Ruby and I both do as well is taking a pause, getting some resources, understanding your drinking before it's not like a hard start, like you've got to start today, you know. And so, yeah, having some resources, because you want to be putting new things in that resource you, versus you would just remove one thing and then what are the other things that, like you said, make you feel good? Running. Oh, I feel good in my body. Like, we drink to feel a certain way. And so we want to find other ways to feel good. And it sounds like meditation is a great tool for, like, a lot of clients talk about numbing. They just want to turn their brain off, you know, and it's like, no, we can relax your brain through meditation. You can relax your, you know, the monkey mind. I was wondering if that's why you called your business. I'm a monkey wise, but I wasn't sure, but I thought about monkey mind.
Me too.
Meditating.
Yeah, well, people have that connection with monkey mind. The actual reason that I did that was this idea in meditation that we're better able to cope with life when we meditate, because we get more what we call adaptation energy. So adaptation energy is our ability to adapt to life, you know, things that life throws us, which might be, I got a flat tire, or in Australia at the moment there's a cyclone about to hit. So you can basically cope with, or, whatever comes up in the news cycle. There's lots in the news at the moment, right? Or, 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife, like all these classic life problems. So adaptation energy, and the way that I characterized it was when I was doing this presentation once, is I put the three wise monkey emojis. So I was like, right, you're able to be more calm, and you can see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Like you're not reacting. So I used to, in my courses, I'd be like, look, we're just stocking up on wise monkeys here so that we can cope with life, therefore not have fewer reasons to reach for a drink to cope with it. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to call it the wise monkey way, because people used to love saying I've been stocking up on my wise monkeys. I've been doing my meditation, but other things as well, like running would give you more wise monkeys, yoga would, reading a book, spending time with your pet, for example. So that's why I called it wise monkey.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I'm going to take that. I'm getting my wise monkeys. That's great.
Yeah,
go ahead, Ruby.
Just when I started meditating, that's what I would say is a monkey mind, and I was drinking when I first learned about meditation, and I felt like I had this monkey mind, like you were describing, like so many thoughts. And I originally also was taught or heard or thought meditation was just you're not supposed to think. And I could never figure that part out. And then the other thing that probably deterred me from meditation was I thought you were supposed to do meditation in the middle of a super stressful situation. And now I've learned that it's a practice, that you do it, say, in the morning, in the afternoon, and you do it no matter what kind of ish for what you were just talking about, adaptation energy. Like it helps you cope with life better. But maybe for me anyway, it wasn't like right in the most stressful time. Like that wasn't the time. So
yeah, so it's two such great points there. So one of the things, everyone has a monkey mind. There's studies that say we have between 80,000 and 100,000 thoughts a day. I'm always like, you just made that up. How can you test that? Because it's like 3 thoughts a second. There's no way that you can. How do you test that? Anyway, in India, there's this lovely analogy about, there's 2 ways to catch a monkey, right? So you can climb the tree and be going through all the branches trying to grab that monkey. So that's my idea of that clear your mind technique. Or the smart monkey catcher puts a banana on the ground and the monkey comes down because the monkey likes the banana, right? So what we're doing in this style of meditation is we're finding this inner banana for our monkey mind. We're moving towards, this is what the mantra does, it moves us towards a place of inner contentedness, right? Not bliss, not ecstasy, but contentedness. So we naturally move towards it, because those 100,000 thoughts that we have a day is the mind just trying to look for better possibilities, is looking for happiness, which might be solving a work problem, or it might be imagining a holiday, or me thinking about what guitar I could buy next. And within that there's an implied statement of I would be happier if, right? I would be happier if I solved that problem, or I would be happier if there wasn't a cyclone about to hit Australia, right? Things like that. Whereas through this magic of thinking, this relaxing sound, which yogis came up with this thousands of years ago, whether it was divine inspiration or trial and error, right? Specific sounds trigger us to move inwards to this place of stillness, where our mind finds this inner nectar, where it's like, oh, I was thinking about all these new things that I could buy or change, but now I've been saturated with this feeling of contentedness. Mm-hmm. So my mind falls silent on its own. So rather than catching the monkey and like gagging it,
right,
I've given it the banana. So that's different. So it means that my mind does fall silent, but I've not silenced my mind. I've just led it in the right direction. So that changes it, which makes it.
I love this so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and then your other point about the morning and evening. Yeah, see, we don't. I mean, you can use it in the middle of a stressful situation, but you're probably not going to think to do that. So instead, we do it as a practice in this style, morning and evening. And it's like, what? You want me to go from 0 to 2 a day? And it's a preemptive thing, right? So morning is to set you up for the day and give you more clarity about what you should be focusing on, because your monkey mind's going to want to do 100 things, but there's probably only 5 things you could do. But then the second one, and this is where it relates to drinking, is we do the second meditation of the day mid-afternoon to early evening, which happens to coincide with witching hour. So it's like, most people that I work with, they're not morning drinkers. They're habitual evening drinkers. So another part of this is that that adaptation energy that we talked about, that's a product of how rested we feel, i.e. we've got more in the morning than the evening because we've just woken up. So that wears out during the day until that point around 4, 5, 6 o'clock where we're thinking, I'd want to change my mood now. So you reach for a drink. So if instead we replace that or preempt it with a meditation, then we're topping up that restfulness that we felt in the morning, and which meant that we were able to stick to our goals. So then I just say to people, look, you don't have to commit to not drinking, but just commit to meditating and then see how you feel. And maybe sometimes you will still drink, but you'll have far fewer of those triggers and you'll be much better able to stick to those goals you had this morning, because you've topped it up, right? You've not just gone from, I've wake up and I was like, I'm definitely not going to drink today. And then you wear out. Like the benefit of sleep, and this is why it's a practice, like the benefits of meditation, they wear off. It's like the benefits of sleep. You can't just go, I just sleep once a week, it's fine. Right? With the benefits of sleep wear off in like 16 hours. At 24 hours or something, your body will fall asleep. Right? So the benefits of meditation wear off as well. So it doesn't really work if you do it once a week or something. It's still better than not doing it, but it's not going to give you the benefits you're looking for, because it's like we want to keep coming back to this, because you will drift into that needy version of you. Remember, we're finding a place of contentedness. If we're not content, we want things to be different. What's a great way to make things different? Alcohol, or buying something, or doom scrolling, or any of those other addictive habits that we can do. So we're just reminding ourselves of this happy version of us. And this is embedded in all the world religions and spiritual traditions. Happiness is to be found within, right? But rather than this abstract or philosophical concept, this tradition has a technique for doing that, right? It's a technique to finding that inner nectar. And when you do that, and there are wide scale studies that show this, people are happier. They self-report as being happier. Day after day, the researchers ask them these questions: how happy are you today? And out of 10 or 100 or whatever the scale is, they self-report being a bit happier each day. And guess what? Happier people are less likely to drink, right? They're less likely to do other damaging things. So this is, again, we're changing you and your coping mechanisms without making any kind of judgments about alcohol. But we're saying, look, let's just put you in a better position, and then you can figure out the rest. But then having communities of people, and that's another key aspect of all of the work that we do in all these podcasts. It's about creating community for people to say, well, I'm not that different from Susan or Ruby or Rory, and that becomes inspiring because, oh, look, they did it, I can do that. And it's not some here's a monk who never drank ever. Right?
No wonder he can meditate and not drink. People. I mean, you're totally inspiring me. I'm like, yes, I need to get back into meditation and get those benefits.
So many benefits.
Well, not even that you need to. This is, when I coach people, it's like, that's you can you want to, you're able to, you get to.
No, that's so good. Well, this has been so enlightening. So if somebody wanted to start meditating and they wanted to do it the Vedic way, what are some of the resources? Where can they find you? Where can they get started?
Yes. So I teach a Vedic technique. So Wise Monkey Way is my platform. So if you Google that, guess what? There aren't any other things called that. So you'll find me. And then I have a free lesson that people can take. They just give me their email, and that's the way to start. But then I also teach it. The best way to learn this is in a live interaction with a teacher. So if people like it, they can join one of my weekend programs. And what the benefit of that is live, which can be on Zoom, but face to face conversing, because there's such benefit of learning with a teacher, because the technique's easy. I keep saying, this is a quote from a colleague teacher of mine. The technique is simple, but you are complicated. Right? Because we all the stuff that we were talking about this technique is a bit counterintuitive, right? It's about not trying. It's about allowing it to happen. It's about not judging, which isn't part of our education. So we kind of overwrite it. So it's really useful. So obviously I'm going to say, come and learn from me, but if not, find a teacher that you resonate with and learn from them in this format of we basically workshop it. So we'd all meditate together, and then I'd say, hey, Susan, talk about your experience, because I can't see into your head about what you were doing.
Yeah.
So I just get you to talk about it, and you might say, oh, I just only thought about my to-do list. It was a bad meditation. And I would say, but that's really good. Your to-do list is naturally there anyway. You're more likely to have that experience in the morning than the evening. Try again this evening, and you'll see that you might have a deeper one, but also you get the benefits of it, even if you just think your to-do list, right? Because that was there anyway. Or if you think about whatever news story you read too much about, you're releasing some aspect of it. So it's like you're unwinding this knot of threads in your head, which is useful. But just one last analogy. I'm full of analogies. Like if you go for a massage, I'm always like, I just want a really gentle massage, but the really useful ones are the painful ones, right? Where as a runner, I go and they stick their thumbs into my hip flexors, and I'm like, ow, right? But I feel better afterwards for that. So that's like a thorny problem coming up in your meditation, rather than being like, oh, it ruined my meditation. It's like, well, that was there. We just needed to massage that stress out of your mind, which, like if you massage the stress out of your shoulder, it might not be that comfortable, but it's useful, right? And you'll feel better afterwards. But it's much easier to get that when you learn from a teacher, because it's counterintuitive, and you'll think, oh, I'm bad at this. I just thought about my to-do list. So it's really about doing this format with a teacher where you can get the confidence to actually do it and keep doing it through those experiences of it not seeming, great.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah, because that's what I struggled with when I first started meditating. I'm not doing it right, which is what I think about pretty much everything I try. I must not be doing it right. So yeah, but no, that's such good advice, and such great analogies, because analogies really help us like picture it, like the banana and the unwinding of, loosening up of the muscles of these tensions that we have. That's so good. So we are at the time of our podcast where we ask our guests what they do in their life to feel lit. So I wanted to ask you, Rory. I can guess that it might have something to do with guitars, because I know a lot of guitar players, when you mention like, what guitar could I buy? Like, guitar players have as many guitars as they can afford usually, but I'm not going to guess that that's it. But what do you do to feel lit?
Yeah, well, I do. So I still play in a band for fun, and I love playing music with people, even if it's just in a room together, and I'll play guitar on my own. And then I was thinking, when you sent me this question, what I've started doing recently, and this is out of my comfort zone, is I go to some of these sober ecstatic dance events, if you've come across them, right? So
I love that.
We're so excited about it.
Yeah. So it's basically dancing in like a hall or a yoga studio, no alcohol, no talking, right? It's just about moving and expressing, and it's so out of my comfort zone. I'm like, I definitely need to do this. It feels really awkward.
Those are
I'm
the
actually-
things you gotta do when you definitely don't want to do them is when you should do them. You know what I mean? Like, I love that.
Exactly.
That is so awesome. That is something that nobody has mentioned. And I think that it's a really cool, yes, something that's out of your comfort zone is definitely something to explore that can help you feel lit, because it makes you feel brave and you just don't even know what to expect, right?
Yeah, and physically moving, and you can't just stand there because everyone's dancing, so you've got to get into it. And what I found when I started going is all these cliches about dance like no one's looking, or dance to your own rhythm, like you have to, otherwise you can't.
Oh, that's so funny. It's just this ecstatic dance. We have 5 of them a week. Like, it's a thing.
Yeah, so good.
No, in Connecticut's pretty buttoned up, whether there's any ecstatic dance around here. But I'll look for it and see if I can find some hidden ecstatic dance in Connecticut somewhere. But well, thank you so much, Rory, for being our guest. We will include links. I think I would really like to do a weekend thing with you to jumpstart my
I'd
meditation
love to
practice.
take you through it.
I'm excited that we had you here, and thank you so much for sharing. I love the way that you described meditation and all your analogies. I think it's going to be really, really helpful for our listeners. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Ruby. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Feel Lit Alcohol-Free Podcast. Do you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show?
All you need to do is head over to Apple Podcasts and do 2 simple things. Leave a rating and review telling us what you think of the show. And in that review, ask us any questions you have about breaking free from wine or living an alcohol-free lifestyle.
That's it. Then tune in to hear your question answered live.
And remember, do something today that will help you feel lit.